Fire Emblem isn't exactly a series known for its great storytelling. There are a few exceptions, such as Genealogy and Thracia, with their universally beloved narratives, and even where entries where the main plot is weaker tend to have some trademark hidden depth in the support conversations and other character interactions. And of course, different people are going to have different opinions on the story and narrative structure of different games. But overall, I wouldn't say that this series as a whole is held up as a benchmark of good storytelling. So comparing the narrative of the Hag in White to this low bar feels a bit unfair. The Hag in White isn't just the best Fire Emblem story I've ever had the pleasure of experiencing. It's one of the best video game stories I've ever experienced, and even that feels like selling it short, with its deep narrative and compelling characters focusing around the theme of guilt, redemption, and learning to forgive yourself. And these themes come up not only in the main story, where the main character Kyra needs to grapple with just how far she's willing to go to save the people she loves, but also in the various arcs of the side characters, most of whom have something from their past haunting them. Either an action they took before the game's narrative, or something they did within the story itself. And like in real life, the characters handle their guilt differently, depending on their personality and their relationships with others in the army. I think this is the sort of story that's best approached as blind as possible, so I'm going to avoid touching on the narrative beyond saying that the writing made me cry multiple times, with the streams often slowing down as I struggled to compose myself so that I could talk through the tears. And as such, I would highly encourage anyone who's interested to check out the Hag in White, because even if you don't gel with the gameplay, it has a story mode where characters all get extra stats so you can experience the narrative for yourself, regardless of your skill or enjoyment at Fire Emblem. That being said, the gameplay of the Hag in White is also super appealing. The central premise of this hack is that you only get access to one healer, Apate, the titular hag. The lore reason for this is that healing magic is considered heretical, since you actually need to steal life force from someone else by killing them in order to heal others. And as such, those with access to the healing arts are hunted down and killed as heretics. Other sources of healing are incredibly rare. You can get vulneraries, but they're expensive and hard to find. And thrones and forts do not heal, they just provide terrain bonuses. So most of the time you're only going to be able to heal 1 unit per turn with Apate's action. This means that any damage you take is a major setback, and so attacking without being countered, either because you use bows or because you kill the foe, is a crucial way of making progress without needing to spend multiple turns healing up your army. In fact, one skill that Hag will really test and reinforce is being able to determine when it's okay to leave a unit injured and when they desperately need medical attention. Apate herself begins with only a heal staff, although as the story progresses, she will gain and lose additional tools, such as Unlock, Physic, and even Staff Force to let her take 2 actions per turn on certain maps. And all of these staves have infinite durability, so you don't need to worry about running out of uses during the campaign. The maps themselves take full advantage of the fact you only have one healer, since normally playing more passively would let you get around this healing restriction. But oftentimes, if you're interested in accomplishing every side objective, maps are going to require your army to split up. So maybe you send some bulky units with vulneraries to the right, and Apate to the left to support your frailer units. Or maybe you decide one treasure room is simply not worth pursuing and focus your entire army on the other side of the map. Either way, playing aggressively and using smart tactics will be rewarded. Now, if this was a one-note gimmick hack, I think it would be cool enough, but the thing that is really neat about the Hag in White is how it experiments with other aspects of design as well. And these elements really supplement the healing bottleneck that the rest of the hack is built around. For example, while unpromoted classes usually don't get skills, promoted infantry each get 1, and snipers get access to bow range +1, which allows them to attack most foes, including other bow foes, uncountered. This is, of course, super valuable in a game where healing is limited, but there's a catch. There's very few units with access to the sniper class line. One of them is your trainee, one of them has a very low strength growth, One of them is a pre-promote who is incredibly frail, and one of them is part of an Aaron versus Samson situation with two other very interesting and strong units. And speaking of the other Aaron versus Samson options, we get access to a combat unit with Shade, forcing enemies to not attack them, and a combat unit with Provoke, so enemies are always forced to attack him over other options, which is incredibly strong for keeping your injured units safe, but it comes with the caveat that this unit takes 5 true damage after every round of combat, so even enemies that are dealing 0 damage to him will start to reduce his durability. Of course, this Provoke Brigand isn't the only option for tanks you have. Generals exist in this hack, and they get access to Canto Plus and Reposition to make up for their lower movement. Additionally, they get 4 weapon types: Lances, Axes, Dark Magic, and Anima Magic. Which might sound out of place, but the Hag in White actually has a large number of hybrid classes, with Warriors getting Anima, 2 different mounted classes who have access to both tomes and physical weapons, and even Spell Swords, who are the Sage equivalent that trade in swords for staves, since no one but a Pate can have staves. You might think that these hybrid classes are useless on units min-maxed into either strength or magic. But Hag features magical variants of the normal martial weapons, as well as physical variants of both Anima and Dark Magic, which are the only 2 schools of magic that your normal units can use. As such, it's worth considering going into a hybrid class when you promote, because yes, this game does have branching promotions similar to the Sacred Stones. And as a nice quality of life, whenever you use a Master Seal and are choosing between the different promotions, you can see not only what stats you would gain, but also the weapon types and any skills associated with that class. The skills are particularly relevant because they are one of the main ways of supplementing your hit rates, which is actually a pretty big concern in the Hag in White, as enemy avoid tends to be higher than vanilla Fire Emblem. This means that accurate weapons like Irons and Slims are still valuable even if they don't pack a big punch, but also you want to leverage the weapon triangle whenever you can. And of course, any accuracy boosting skills like Triangle Adept or Thunderstorm come at a premium. Although these are not the only way of bolstering hit rates, because the Hag in White has leadership stars. And one way it balances out the somewhat mediocre pre-promotes as compared to the very competent growth units is many of the mid-game squad have leadership stars to bolster your accuracy and potentially counter enemy leadership stars, which will also be present on more difficult maps. In fact, there's even a non-combat unit specifically based around the leadership star mechanic, as he is a tactician who can't deal any damage himself, but has 2 leadership stars, the skill Inspiration, Rally Spectrum, and Rally Movement. And he's not the only interesting utility unit in Hag, as instead of a traditional dancer, this game features a transforming unit, similar to Zane from Fire Emblem 1. Now, I know what you're thinking, but no, you can't get a second healer out of this. If she transforms into a Pate, then she just can't use healing staves and is basically worthless. But you can have her copy other powerful units in order to wreck shop in multiple places on the same map. Lopez is another interesting utility unit. He is this game's thief, although since there's no stealing in Hag, the only thief utility he offers is Lock Touch. But he can still make you money, because every kill that he gets nets you a coin that sells for 150 gold. He is a pretty weak combat unit, but he can participate in a triangle attack and use high-rank swords like the Armor Slayer or the Devil Sword in order to get those sweet, juicy money kills. And considering how tight the economy of early game Hag is, those coins make a huge difference. The last pair of utility units I want to talk about are the Bargain Bros. These are 2 thoroughly mediocre pre-promotes who have bargain and therefore can get a discount on shops, but only if you deploy them on the maps that have vendors, which is oftentimes a big ask with this game's limited deployment slots. Speaking of the deployment slot problem, you might worry that in a game with such a robust cast, you will need to do multiple playthroughs in order to get to know the stories of everyone in your army. But while Hag is definitely good enough that I replayed it multiple times, you don't need to in order to get the complete story, because this game utilizes the home base, similar to Tellius. Here you can activate supports on specific chapters and also talk to the members of your army, either to get lore drops or sometimes concrete rewards. And these talk conversations actually evolve based on who is alive and dead. If someone has a close relationship with another unit but they die, you might skip the conversation that involves both of them, but you also might get an alternate variant where the survivor is sad about the fact that their friend is no longer here. But don't worry if you're the sort of person that resets to keep everyone alive, you won't miss any of this content because once you clear the game, you can freely view any conversations in the base in the post-game, as well as access a wacky meta-narrative post-game campaign where you can use any of the units in your army, including those that died throughout the campaign. Or alternatively, you can reset the game and do a New Game Plus run, which has a couple of changes, including the ability to access the bad ending, where Kira fully gives in to evil. Honestly, it's kind of absurd just how much extra content there is in this game. It's truly a masterpiece, and even though 2025 is only about halfway over, I fully believe that this is the best hack of the year. There is just so much wonderful stuff from both a gameplay and story perspective. I'm even planning on making a second video focusing in on a portion of the story, but since that will be spoiler heavy, we'll save that for another time. If you want early access to it when it drops, consider joining my Patreon. Speaking of which, let's thank my patrons. Thank you to Electric Giga, Erica Ford, YLO1, George Grenville, the 7th PM, Jamie Collins, Arvis, Crispy Matthews, Floa Hay, I Like Vertata, Henry Fint, Amy Hazel, Neas Costa, Faulty Videos, Lyra, Kyle Madison, Derek Williams, Just Riley, Anna Cabana, Some Trades, The Daily Fugle, Faye, Magic Bite, Shinthia, Sardonic Muse, Dysike, Chris, Root Beer Pins, Queen Elizam, Aerith Emblem, Control Dages, Roman Cormansic, Nick Knack Hammersmack, Lepton, Cabbage, SUP, Caius Cole, Histiglop, Bree, Punch Fighter Champion, Eggman, Maxine the Vampire Queen, Dragonback Lancer, Carrier Has Left, Jill, Angel Nabs Caceres, Key the Iron Idol, Calamity Callie, Anom Wanderer, A Clever Username of Lies, Jackson McMahon, Saren Gurlixy, Tailored Muffin, Andu, Len, Gameboo, Carosa, Fyrant, Your Doctor, Frozen Helm, Girl Boss, Lizard Bongwater, Christopher Bueno, Marin McLean, Jaden, Reflect, Dylan Solis, Guiji555, Smaz Ruby, Zycrom, Robin D, Alenby, Hound Dogs, Thaythom, Klon, and especially my Jakins, Thick Molder, Adele, Alexander Roper, Siggy, and Serial Bull. If you want to join the names on screen, then for as little as $3 a month, consider joining my Patreon. But please only donate if you can comfortably afford to do so. I don't want anyone going broke over Fire Emblem. You can, of course, also like, subscribe, all the YouTube stuff, but regardless of what you choose to do, I hope you have a wonderful day. Stay safe, gamers.